Hi, welcome to The Pursuit of Truth. So I thought I'd discuss this convex Earth documentary. To be honest, I never even heard about it until I heard, I think it was Jamie Brown was mentioning it a few days ago. And then when I did hear about it, I was thinking, oh, is this an April Fool's thing? Because obviously it was close. I think it was released on, was it the 29th of March, something like that. But I didn't know it was released on that date because I was hearing it after April the 1st, and I was assuming, because people were saying that they were duped by this and people were sharing it, and I was thinking, oh, is it an April 1st thing? So I've watched it, and it's I didn't actually get why people at first were upset with it, because a lot of it is actually proving through some scientific means that the Earth isn't round as we've been told, but is more flat-like. Because they do a laser test, they mention the ships going over the horizon, that with your eyes you can see them go down hull first and then the mast, which I must admit, because I mentioned this before, you know, how why are we still talking about something that's already been disproved? We already know that that's because of our eyes. But then there was, I can't remember who it was, I think I wrote his name, it was something Infinity, Subtle Infinity, was talking about the convex Earth thing. Was it him? I can't remember now. I watch so many things on YouTube. So I think it was, and they were talking about the, no, it was Beyond the Imaginary Curve. Dow was going through some different, this was yesterday, which would have been, was it the 5th of April 2018, and he was going through the different channels. I think it was that episode I saw, and he was showing how they were still talking about you know, the idea of looking out to see with your eyes and seeing the ship going down, as if it is still fact. It is still, like, scientifically a good way of telling you that the Earth is round, because the ships are going over the curvature. Whereas everyone knows now, surely they must know, that if you get a camera and do the same thing, you can then pull it back into vision. So now I saw another video on YouTube where they were discussing that, and they were saying, actually I think it was on the it was on the Convex Earth documentary, and they were showing that it was a bit confusing, really, because this documentary is like the worst made documentary ever, because I'm going off onto different topics one by one, isn't it? It's you know, they like build it up, you know, they did an experiment, but what did they find out, and then that comes out a lot later. So I wish they just do the, you know, the experiment and there's the answer, rather than putting the answer at the end to try and get you to watch the program. So it's really badly put together. It's very sensationalized, which I suppose that should have been a clue that this program wasn't going to be too serious or too convincing. So they then showed the ship going over the horizon, and then they were using like a telescope with a camera attached to it, you know, and then they were saying that what was actually being witnessed was actually like a mirage, because they showed that the boat had flipped, so it was a reflection. So this is the whole light refraction thing that I've heard people talk about. Now I know a lot of flat earthers will say that doesn't really exist. I don't really know. I don't know that much about light and whether it bends or not. The problem is, the problem is with all this is, unless it depends how much of science is true, and it also depends how much you have of the knowledge of science, and whether we all know that science updates itself all the time. So science is really knowing something, or your own current understanding doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to change, because we've seen that happen a lot of times. So I don't know, but if there was a visual of this ship, if it did look flipped, then obviously the boat can't have flipped, so there must be a reflection. So I don't know about that. But then they use that as proof that it was flat, not curving. So I don't know, because I was assuming that would suggest that it was curved, and so that the light was reflecting back. But they were saying it was like a mirage. So that confused me completely. And I think the problem is they wouldn't clarify. They wouldn't say, and this means, which any normal documentary would do. They would do the conclusion and saying that, so by looking at this, we now know that this is. So they split bits up. So it was very, very confusing. So it was a very badly made documentary. The other thing I noticed that it was Brazilian. And obviously then people will, especially of the West, and we all know that people judge each other, and in the back of my mind I was thinking that, if it had been done by, say, someone American or British people, we probably would give it more credence. And that's completely, well, it's racist in a way, isn't it? But it's wrong. But we do judge things like that. We, if it's a Hollywood movie, it's much better than, say, a Bollywood movie, just because we're in the West. So that it's interesting that it was a Brazilian documentary, and also it's interesting that after doing 7 years of research, they would release it around April Fool's Day. Now I don't know, obviously maybe they don't celebrate April Fool's Day, but I suspect most people know about April Fool's Day on the 1st of April, and it's a time when people play pranks, and there's lots of these, especially nowadays on social media and stuff, where they will pretend something and then it's an April Fool's. So it's really bad timing to have released it around that time, and some of that makes me think that, is this like people are saying, that is this on purpose? Maybe it's to test the waters to see how people, whether they will believe that the Earth is flat and it's not a sphere. It's like the beginning of the crossover, and this goes into a bit of my next topic, and also a bit of yesterday's Pursuit of the Truth, when I was talking about Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela, and how that the exchange of power, that the people really in power were still in power, but just Nelson Mandela was the figurehead, and whether that was what I was suggesting, that it could have been how it was done, and why Winnie Mandela's character was attacked. So, but what I'm trying to suggest here, and what you'll hear a lot of us talk about, is the idea that there will come a time when it will be proven that the Earth is flat, and that we already have seen, like with Neil deGrasse Tyson, say that no, the Earth is like a pear-shaped. So was that, and I assume he's part of NASA, isn't he? So for him to say something completely outlandish like that, and he is a credible person in their world, because he's like NASA, and he's a scientist. Well, I assume he's a scientist, who knows? But he's always talking about these things, and so for him to say something like that when we've seen a complete sphere, perfect circle, for him to now say that the bottom is slightly heavier than the top, where we visually haven't seen that, it'll be interesting to see whether those Earth-like pictures will start changing over the time to sort of reflect that. And then you've got to say, well, how's that possible? Surely, And so, but what they're saying is that eventually there will be a time when those in power, those who have lied to us, will then agree to the new understanding, and will take ownership of that. A bit like how you get shields, a bit like how I was suggesting how maybe Nelson Mandela was used to stop apartheid, and because keep people in check, but by following him, because that's what they wanted. So they gave them what they wanted, but they didn't really give them what they wanted, because they didn't get their land back. They still don't have their white South Afrikaans people still have more of the land than black indigenous people do in Africa, in South Africa. So what did they really get? So that's what I'm trying to suggest, is that this will happen, where those people who are lying to us, or those people who want power, because if they don't take ownership of it, if say like, we all decided, and we found out that it wasn't, and then there'll be anarchy and revolution, and we don't trust these people. Obviously these people, they want to be in power forever, they want to be rich forever, they don't want to, if they can control it, if they start to admit, yes, oh, you're right, we were duped by NASA, we were duped by Brian Cox or Neil deGrasse Tyson or whoever, and they lied to us, and these pictures, they've been telling us lies, we never knew about it, and you know, that was the previous regime, that was the previous government, that was the previous people. It wasn't us. We're not anything to do with that. We're telling you the truth now. You've got to believe us. Follow us. We will give you the truth always. And yes, the earth is flat now, and you know, everything can go back to normal, and you can still give us your money and still let us control you. So is that what this convex Earth documentary was about? Testing the waters, introducing some of the facts amongst other things. Because what I noticed with the subtle infinity was saying, that was, I didn't even pick up on this, that that apparently the documentary, I didn't see it at the beginning, to be honest, where they were talking about this alien, Baloo, who had given them this information, and that had led to this investigation taking place. So obviously that's sort of marrying up two different types of conspiracy, and then it's sort of sometimes, and maybe this is what also people in power wanted to do if this is the case, and it does make sense that they would release something that had a lot of the flat earth arguments in there, proving it, so that flat earth people would see it and think, yes, this is brilliant, finally some media network has made something with science, with scientists explaining what we believe, and they'll share it like they did. Lots of people were sharing it, and now they've had to retract it in the sense that by doing that, and by having some other stuff in there that is rubbish, it actually makes people who then come along and see these videos then see, oh yeah, flat earth, look, it wasn't that they were wrong, you know. It sort of makes you think that you got it right and then takes it away. It's very clever if that is what that was really about, because it worked, and that may set back people from following, because they may have seen that video and thought, oh yeah, so scientists saying it is, and then you find out, oh no, it was an alien that told them, and then people think, oh my god, what am I doing believing this? Alright, so the other thing I was thinking of is about individuals, how we often blame, you know, like say the BBC for their broadcasting news, but then I was thinking that you do get, like, especially like with this nerve agent thing in Russia, like today on Sky News they were talking about certain things, and you do get some journalists who will, you know, you get, like say with Iraq War, you know, Channel 4 used to do a lot about the weapons of mass destruction not being there and that kind of stuff, and eventually it came through other journalists. So there are individuals who, you know, even if they might be part of an organisation, that doesn't necessarily mean that every single one of them is involved in deception. And some of them, it's not willful, it's you know, we don't understand what is truth and what's false. So I think sometimes we overlook that. We tend to judge people by their groups. You know, that's, you know, how racism takes place as well. You know, that was what I was saying before, and that before about how people use, you know, they say the Jews are doing this, you know, the Jews are behind 9/11 and stuff like that. Whereas you can't say something like that, because it's not all of them. If it was, say, one person who happened to be Jewish, may not even be practicing, you know, you can't say the Jews. But people often, I hear on these conspiracy things, they say things like that, and that does tend to make you think that, oh, well, these people may have some kind of racial problems. So yeah, that was what I was thinking, is that we have to be careful that just because we may believe an organisation isn't telling the truth, that doesn't mean the individuals are. You could be part of something and still tell the truth, but obviously it gets more difficult if you believe that the organisations are involved in lying and deception, and that they will then obviously come down, you know. But you hear about that a lot, you know, where a journalist will want to do a story and the editor will say no. So it may be that the journalist had good intentions, but it's the editor who has the final answer, and then eventually you get enough no's and then you stop doing things like that. Yeah, so I think that's it basically. The only other thing was about, you know, this taking back of power, of control, and that's what I think this convex Earth is about. Is starting to get us towards that sort of. I don't know who made this program. It was interesting when it ended. It listed them as cast. Cast is usually when it's actors, but I don't know if that's just a translation thing. But maybe this is it testing the waters? Is it putting some fact with some lies, which is a good propaganda tool, isn't it, to do it that way, to see how people react, to see, you know, I mean, if it is true that the earth is flat and that people in the power who are making the lie know that, and if they believe that the wall is crumbling down and that people are becoming too awoken to this subject, and that, you know, as science is going, as people get more money, as people get more ability to see things and know things, they obviously don't want to release the information after everyone knows. They want to be the one that releases the information. It's controlling, and that's all part of it, isn't it? You control the story. If you control the story, you can, you know, get yourself out of problems. That's why a lot of celebrities, when they're accused of these scandals or whatever, you know, if they're clever, they come out before the scandal comes out and confess, and by that way they control, you know, because people will come to them rather than go to the other people who are telling the story about them. So yeah, I think it's interesting, and it's interesting that a lot of people shared this video, and whether it will do damage. A bit like the fake moon one that they made some years ago. I don't know if that was an April Fool's, where they had Buzz Aldrin and lots of different people, and they were pretending that the moon landing was fake, and then you find out it was just a spoof documentary. Anyway, that's for another subject, space. Alright, take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.